إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم عبد الله ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا بين يدي الساعة من يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون فإن أصدق حديث كتاب الله وخير الهدى هدى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه المجيد بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا يحسبن الذين كفروا أنما نملي لهم خير لأنفسهم إنما نملي لهم ليزدادوا إثما وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. My dear brothers, many of us will be aware of the shocking scenes that we are seeing in the blessed lands of Palestine, and we have seen the atrocities that are taking place at the hands of the Israelis, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alleviates the pain of the Palestinians, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala subjugates their enemy and controls their enemy, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala writes all those who have passed away as shuhada, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants ease to the ummah of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Once again, if you look at the history of this entire conflict, this is not just a one-off episode, but rather this is another episode in a series of episodes that dates back about 75, 80 years, where this occupier has tried its utmost to try and expel the Palestinians from their homes, try to annex as much land as possible, and to ultimately do whatever it takes to achieve its ultimate goal and to solidify a land for itself. If we look back in the history of this entire conflict, in 1917, this declaration known as the Balfour Declaration was ratified by this government, the British government, to recognize a state for the Israelis and to recognize a state for the Jews. And following that, this gave the Israelis a kind of green light to now start and annex land, that those who are present in Palestine to take more and more land for themselves. And they begin to take more and more land by force. And the great episode in 1948 known as the Nakba, where they established themselves, quote unquote, independence. And they kill thousands upon thousands of Palestinians. And they displace close to 700,000 Palestinians. These people who have lived there for years. And now they have become refugees in their own lands. They've been kicked out of their homes. Many of the people who are present there today are the generations that will come after of those original people who were thrown out of their homes. They hold the keys to the original homes that their grandparents once lived in. And so now this episode that is taking place is just another scene from a whole series of scenes that we continuously hear of the conflict that is taking place in that land. And so, we must really become aware of this situation. We must learn about the history of this situation and educate those who are around us. What you will find now, one of the interesting things about these conflicts, is that you find those people, the munafiqeen, the hypocrites, who side towards the enemy without a care and concern. You find now governments who say, yes, Israel has the right to defend themselves, when they know that civilians are being killed, children are being killed. They bombed a hospital the other day. I mean, who is hiding in a hospital? Such that they will kill people who their limbs are falling off, and they decide to attack a hospital. And so we find the munafiqeen from amongst the enemy, and we also find the munafiqeen from amongst our own ranks, who are not willing to speak out, who are scared to speak out, who are scared about their pocket, the money that they're receiving. They're scared that it might affect their job. It might affect the money that they're receiving. But there are amongst us those who are strong, and those who are brave, and those who are willing to speak out against the evil and the atrocity that is taking place in those lands. And so this affair requires people to stand up and to speak out. Now, amongst all of this, it is, when we look at the scenes, we look at what's going on, it's very depressing. Us Muslims around the world, we're in a very helpless situation. We can try and blame the governments, we can try and blame, the countries around, the Arab countries, saying, why are you not doing anything? Why are the Muslim countries not doing anything? But that is a discussion like talking to a brick wall. Everybody plays a political game here, right? But what we have to think about is, how do we translate those emotions into action? This is very, very important. When we look at all of this going on, yes, we get sad. Yes, we get depressed. Yes, we feel helpless. But only when we convert those emotions into actions, then we can see positive change. Because if we are just emotions, then that turns into numbness. And when that turns into numbness, we become inactive. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. That I did not create jinn kind and mankind except to worship, be active in worship. So in response to all of this, we must become people who see what's going on, look at what's going on, and work towards action, work towards positivity, doing something. And if we just sit there quietly and just look at it and see what's going on, then how can we become people of action? How can we become people who cause some positive change? So I want to, in this khutbah, just mention a few things that we can do right here, all of us, regardless of our location, to try and make an effort and support our brothers in Palestine. The first is to do dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is not something that you do at the end after you've tried everything else. After you've tried all of the other things and you think, okay, I'll do dua as well. No. That's amrul awwal. That's the first thing that we do. That we raise our hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and beseech Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, oh Allah, farrij kuruba an ummat al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That He alleviates the pain that is been taking place upon the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Our teachers would say, if you really care about Palestine, you would wake up in the depths of the night and cry to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you really cared. We like to put our Palestine flags on. We like to show ourselves as being very, hardworking. Who is standing up in the middle of the night, crying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, alleviate the pain? Who from amongst us? Who can say that? When we want to get a job, or when we want to get married, or when we want something, we cry at night, right? When we really, really want something, we wake up, we sacrifice our bed and we cry at night, right? Seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the sign, the first sign as to whether we are really people who are serious in this. And the second thing in connection to this is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the musabbibul asbab. He is the one who creates the means. So we want guidance as to what to do, we seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance. And that is the first thing, that we raise our hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, shed tears in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first thing. The second thing that we can do practically, especially in this country, is to lobby those people who are elected to be our representatives. Those councillors, those MPs. Because you have to understand how this country works. There's a hierarchy. We have people who are elected and they ultimately connect to the government. And we, in our small efforts, can try and lobby towards them. The letters that you write, the efforts that you write to try and speak to them and tell them, look at what is taking place. And this is important. Because if an MP receives one or two letters, they might think, well, nobody cares. But if they receive thousands upon thousands upon thousands of letters, they've got to open them. They've got to read them. They have to respond to you. And so this will make an effort. Try and, reach out to the local MP, write to them. Tell them about what is going on. Tell them about the atrocity. Tell them about what's taking place. It might be the narrative that they're not even agreeable to. It doesn't matter. Write to them. Make an effort. The third thing, which I think is very important, that many of us can have an impact on, is social media. Social media. If I was to take a survey now, I'd say the majority, maybe over 95% of people, are on some sort of social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of these things. I know one of the interesting things a couple of years ago, subhanAllah, one of the things about the Israelis, all they care about is they want the narrative to be towards them. They want sympathy towards them. Well, look, all of this is going on now. Now, after the attack of Hamas, and I'm not, what they did and tried to hurt civilians is wrong. But now, they have a right to defend themselves. They have a right to defend themselves. And people are asked, but they will kill civilians. They will kill free people. No, they have a right to defend themselves. Look at how now the narrative changes in their favor. Social media is one of the most important means that we can change the narrative. You and I can change the narrative. And a couple of years ago, the defense minister of Israel, can you imagine the defense minister of Israel? He calls a meeting. Who does he call a meeting with? The director of Facebook, the director of Twitter, the director of Instagram. And he says, look, I'm worried because people keep posting in support of Palestine and it's changing the narrative against us. So we want you to make effort to try and shadow the posts, try and affect the posts so that they don't have much exposure. Can you imagine that? Like, why does he care what's going on social media? It's because all they care about is their world image. And so you and I have an opportunity to spread the message of what is the truth of the reality that's on the ground. And one of the things that I would tell you is that, the algorithms of social media, you need to understand how they work. As you're flicking through things, the system can see as you're flicking through things. If you see a post and you think, and you start to engage in that post, maybe start commenting and stuff, people see that post more. That's very, very important. The more you engage in things, spread things, share things, people see it more. And so we have to become people who use this means. This is available on our hands right now. Let us not forget the statement of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that whenever you see a munkar, an evil, فَلْيُغَيِّرْ بِيَدِهِ, then let him change it with his hands. Okay, maybe physically we can't change it with our hands. And if he's not able, فَلْيُغَيِّرْ بِلِسَانِهِ, then change it with his tongue. This is the proverbial tongue that we have, that we can use to change the narrative. Change the narrative there. And so we must become people now who try to use this. Even now, right now, the Western governments are trying to pass bills to control what you share on social media. They want to control it because they want to control the narrative. So you have the ability to share what you want to share and to spread the message. The majority of people who maybe might not necessarily be invested entirely in this whole thing, probably are just watching the news. And we know what the news is showing. We know the narrative that the news is showing. But we have an opportunity to spread that message, to spread the message of truth and the reality of what is happening to the Palestinians. The fourth thing is to give charity. Now, obviously, it's a difficult situation. Can you imagine Gaza? Gaza, in terms of geographical, is only 3 miles in length. And you know how many people inhabiting in Gaza? 2 million people. Can you imagine 2 million people in a 3-mile strip? It's the most densely populated place on earth. Okay? And so, this is, a chance for us now to give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it doesn't matter how much you give. It doesn't matter how much you give. Just give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You do not know, my dear brothers, that £1, £2 that you throw into the bucket, not even thinking about it, could be the means that you enter into paradise. You imagine on the Day of Judgment, when your scales are somewhat even, and that £1 that you gave tips the scales and causes you to enter into paradise. It could very possibly be. We have no guarantee with regards to our good deeds. We have no guarantee that they will be accepted. But maybe the small actions that we do that you perceive are nothing are heavy in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we know now that despite efforts are being trying to bring aid into Gaza, inshallah the doors will open so that aid can enter into this place. And khalas, now it's an opportunity for us to invest and help and support our ummah. No matter how, as the Prophet said, ummah ka jasadin wahid. The ummah is like one body. And right now, one limb of the body is feeling pain. How much are we willing to invest to cure that limb that is going through that difficulty? Give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the final thing that I would say is to boycott. Many of us might know this BDS movement, the boycott divestment and sanctions movement, where you look at those companies, look at those organizations which donate and give huge amounts of money to the enemy and boycott them. And oftentimes, people think, well, why bother? Who cares whether I go to McDonald's or I get a bottle of Coke or I go here, and who cares? But Israel, the Zionists themselves have tried their utmost to stop the BDS movement. Why? Because it's affecting them financially. You see all of this that's going on? What is that? It's money that's being flooded into that country. And they have the ability to throw bombs without even thinking. And so you and I have the ability to curb that a little bit, to control that a little bit. And it has the desired impact, because they're trying their utmost to ban this boycott movement in all of the countries, because it's affecting them financially. So look and see online those companies which give their utmost support to the Zionists and boycott them. You don't need to have a bottle of Coke, right? You don't need to go to McDonald's. There's so many other alternatives. And in fact, it's an opportunity for us to support our local businesses. Our local businesses who oftentimes you go to another place and you won't even think of it. Help and support those people who are local, who are not supporting this evil regime. So these are some opportunities for us to try and help and support our brothers. But the final thing that I will say in this part of the khutbah is one of the most important things that we need to do is to educate ourselves. Majority of us, we just look at this situation, we see what comes up on the screens and we just think, oh, this is really sad. The Gazan situation again. We do not know the history. We do not know what's come off before. Like I said, this is just another episode of a series of episodes that has lasted for 70, 80 years. What do we know with regards to it? What do our children know with regards to it? What do the people around us know with regards to it? Each and every single one of us, we have a sphere of influence. Those people who we can influence, those people who we can speak to and try and influence their thought. Who are those from amongst us? Think about those people who are the circle who's around you that you can influence. And educate yourselves and educate those around you, so that they learn about what is happening. They learn about this atrocity. And they try their utmost to educate others and to change the mindset. Not the one that's being flooded into them from the screens, but the reality of the situation that is on the ground. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the ability to change, to make effort, whether it's with our hands, whether it's with our tongue, or whether it's with our heart. We ask Allah for tawfiq. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. My dear brothers, as we look and we reflect upon this entire situation, and every situation that goes on, whether it's the earthquakes that we have been seeing recently this year, all of the conflicts, all of the difficulties that the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ go through, the entire thing comes under one concept. And that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in total control. He does as He pleases, and He has a plan that is greater and more beyond the understanding of us. We see this and we often think, and people often think, why is the evil going on? Why does evil take place? People even lose faith because of this. Why does that, if God, quote unquote, is so merciful, why is the evil taking place? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Hakim. He's all wise. And we don't necessarily see the hikmah in this, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the originator of the heavens and the earth. And He will decide what takes place. As I mentioned many weeks ago, when we saw the earthquakes that took place in Turkey. And we had this discussion about why does evil take place? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intersperses all of these affairs with wisdom that we do not see. Sometimes He will expose that wisdom to us, and oftentimes He won't. Look at the situation now with these people. I saw a video, subhanallah. Subhanallah, look at the face of these people. There's a man, he's in hospital. He's lost his eldest son, 20-year-old son. And he lost a young child, 3 years old. And people are crying around. He said, why are you crying? We are shuhada. He said, I raise my children so they are prepared for shahada. So they're prepared to die in the path of Allah. What type of faith is that? What type of faith is that? So there's a wisdom in these things that we do not perceive. It is possible that from amongst those people who have died, maybe there are people who are not necessarily that religious. Maybe they weren't necessarily that close to Allah, but Allah put this upon them so they go into the ranks of the shuhada. And in the end of the day, it's all about the akhirah. It's not about this world, really. Each and every single one of us, we have our own akhirah to be accountable for. Our own ending that we're going to go to. And what is it greater than to be the rank of the shuhada? The shuhada that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they're not dead, in reality they are alive. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving them rizq in their graves. What type of rank is that? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the controller of the heavens and the earth. He does as He pleases. And all we do is have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Trust His plan, trust His guidance, trust everything that He does. These people are not in control. These people are not in control. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who's in control. And sometimes we see things that are perceived as evil, but are ultimately part of Allah's plan. The final thing that I would say, my dear brothers, is that in the things that I've mentioned here, there may be some from amongst us who say, what's the point? What's the point of doing all this? What's the point of getting up and going to marches and protests and shouting your voice and boycotting? Who cares? What's the point? And I tell you what the point is. The point is that when we stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to us that you saw this atrocity taking place. And I gave you this resource. I gave you this resource. I gave the ability to speak. I gave you this. All of these things I gave to you in your hand. What did you do? What did you do? Did you raise your hand? Did you raise your voice? Did you speak out against the evil? What did you do? And if we stand in front of Allah just saying, I have nothing to say, then how are we going to answer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How? At least we make an effort. We may perceive that it has no desired end result, but it doesn't matter. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, when He speaks about paradise, He says, وَكَانَ سَعْيُكُمْ مَشْكُورًا. That after all of this effort, or the beauty of paradise, when you enter into paradise, what's Allah going to say? Your efforts were appreciated. Your effort, your struggle, your strive, that's what was appreciated. You made a little bit of effort in the ability that you had. Allah loves the effort. Allah's not asking you for end goals. Allah's not asking you to stop the conflict there. How are we going to do that? But Allah wants you in the ability and the resources that you have to make an effort. So that we stand at the gates of paradise and we hear the call from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكَانَ سَعْيُكُمْ مَشْكُورًا إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا صَلُّوا عَلَيْهِ وَسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في كل وقت وحين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد حتى ترث الأرض ومن عليها وأنت خير الوارثين اللهم انصر المسلمين في كل مكان اللهم انصر المسلمين في فلسطين اللهم انصر المسلمين في فلسطين اللهم انصر المسلمين في فلسطين اللهم انصرهم نصرا عزيزا وافتح لهم فتحا مبينا اللهم دمر أعداءهم يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم اكتب موتاهم الشهداء يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون